I was on vacation when I was 15. I was separated from the people I knew, and I was attacked, assaulted, and then somehow I was run over by a motor vehicle, probably going about 60 miles per hour. At that time, I shot out of my body, so I was clinically dead. I was beyond time and space, and so I did see my dead body, and I had decided that I was going to go back, and I knew there was a mission there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with Venciendo la Depre. This is your host, Adolfo Segovia. I have a great guest today, Dr. Allison Snowden. She has she suffered a lot in her life, so she has a really difficult story, but she was able to turn that and make it something amazing now, so that she's helping people today. Before we start, I would like to remind you to please subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. We're on all platforms, so please like, subscribe, and share. I want to share a little bit about myself. So my name is Adolfo Segovia. When I was 18 years old, I was abducted by a drug cartel. After about a couple of months after that, I was assaulted at gunpoint. And then about a month later, this cartel started calling my family to ask for ransom money, or they were going to abduct my mom or my sister. So that forced us to pretty much escape our country, Mexico, and start a new life in the US. So we did that. And here we had a bunch of other problems that, if you want to learn more about my story, it's on the channel. But anyways, that caused me depression, that caused me anxiety, ADHD, PTSD, and I am pretty much suffer from that for about 10 years. And thank God I was able to recover, so that now I can share this story with you and try to help other people. So without further ado, let's introduce Dr. Allison Snowden. I'm super happy that she's with us because she really had a very difficult life, but she's been able to switch that and make it something great to help other people, and also to live an amazing life that I know she has. So, Dr. Snowden, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on and just saying hi to all of your subscribers and everyone who is listening. Yeah, I think what we have in common is my trauma happened in Mexico too. So I was on vacation, and I at 15, that experience. In one experience, it was the worst part or the scariest experience of my life, and then the most enlightening. So what happened is when I was 15, that was in 1999, I was separated from the people I knew, and I was attacked, assaulted, and then somehow I was run over by a motor vehicle, probably going about 60 miles per hour. At that time, I shot out of my body, so I was clinically dead. At the scene, the Cancun police arrested a guy for, my death, and that that was the time where my fear of death really was evaporated, because that the experience of death was actually very easy. And after you die, you go into this huge bubble of unconditional love, and you remember who you are, and you remember your power. You're no longer confined by a brain and a physical body, so you're back into your soul essence, and it's like coming home, and it's beyond time and space. And so I was just in this energetic reality. Some people call it heaven, and it is the most powerful love I've ever felt in my life, and everything made sense. And so Earthside, the I guess police arrested a man for my death, but I guess I was not out long enough because I woke up in the ambulance. So I had this profound spiritual experience where my fear of death was erased. Um, you can whatever. There's many different names for God. So God, source, the divine, the part of us that is beyond this earth. It's like that divinity that is within us. And this is like without religion. So it's that spiritual aspect of what is creation and what is eternal within our, we're all in these physical human bodies, and all of us are born, and then we physically die. That's guaranteed. But there's a part of us that is eternal. And so that's where I was like at on that plane of consciousness. And so I felt like I was beyond time and space, and sometimes that's hard for us to wrap our heads around. But I just was getting very healed, and all of the illusions of the world and what's important, what's not important, just kind of fell away. And I can remember being like, this is who I am. This energy, it's not my physical body or my brain that is who I am. It's like the energy that is animating within me. And so I used to have nightmares about it because I did see my dead body, and I had a lot of physical injuries. I ruptured my tibial artery, so I bled out a lot in my leg, and it was pretty severe. My pelvis was broken. Most of my ribs were broken. My upper arm, my humerus was shattered in like hundreds of pieces. And my jaw was broken in 4 different places. So it's pretty severe trauma. So one, do not fear death. It's actually one of the most exhilarating experiences to go back to your source. And also just like I re-remembered who I was. A lot of us, because of our programming from our early childhood or whatever culture we grew up in, we identify our self-concept as, oh, I'm my skin color, I am my level of income. This defines who I am. And when you get up to that level and you're just in your soul, you just remember what really matters, which is pretty much what God or my guides told me, is how much you love yourself and love others. And also that like love is the most powerful force in the world. And so I was looking down at my dead body, and I was like, well, shoot, like I'm dead. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, I don't know, God has a sense of humor. I guess I have a really big sense of humor too, because I was kind of like, well, okay, well, what am I going to do now? And so I had not a choice. I had decided that I was going to go back and bring that love of that I was experiencing on that plane of consciousness, or that heaven consciousness, and bring it back to my traumatized body. And so once you decide to go back, and I guess it's like, you just get funneled back in. So I woke up in the ambulance, and I then lost consciousness several times because I lost so much blood. I lost like half my blood supply. So it was hard for me to stay awake. I had to have emergency surgery at a Cancun hospital. The surgery compared to the US surgical system, it was scary because I didn't I thought they were going to cut off my leg. I didn't feel safe because no one was wearing uniforms, so I felt afraid because people looked at like who attacked me. I had to my mom, in some miracle form, like found me, because some first responders found my purse and got my ID and called my mom at that hotel. So she ended up, that's in a miracle that she ended up there, but I had to have emergency surgery. And then my parents medvaced me from Cancun, and my dad worked at a level 5 trauma center in Missouri, and so I was airlifted back there. And yeah, that started it was a 3-year journey for all of my bones to heal. And I was a runner. I was like 6th in the country with horseback riding. So literally I couldn't even, move my foot. I had all of these complications. So I went from, it was a month before my 16th birthday. And so I was sixth in the nation in horseback riding. I was running 5 or 6 miles a day, super able. And then everything just changed in, 1 second. And then, but when I remember going back into my body, and like, I knew like that there was like a mission there. And so I always remembered that vibration of love, of the truth of who we are is that love. But the thing is that like when you've been traumatized to that moment, it's a process to heal. And physical, a lot of people, I don't think there's many people that, maybe there are people in your audience that have had that physical trauma, but also trauma is the emotional trauma and also the fear of something happening, and emotional trauma or that threat literally has imprints, and and our brain has to adapt to survive. And what happens is that when we're traumatized, like our brain changes. And currently in the medical model, or just, where I grew up, there were no strategies for healing trauma. They were like, oh, once my bones healed, which were like, it took 3 years. I was in and out of a wheelchair. My surgeries, my bones wouldn't
Doctor,
heal.
let me interrupt you. Can you explain how was that those 3 years where you were in a wheelchair? How was your state of mind? Because we're talking about healing and that you had enlightenment at the moment when you pretty much died,
Yeah.
but also then you were a 16-year-old. You were
Yeah.
a
Oh, yeah. It was.
how was how can you share a little bit about the experience that you
Oh,
suffered? Did you got depressed, or were
oh,
you like, hey, this happened, I'm great, I'm gonna do all this good in the life?
it was, I mean, I was in shock. I think that's normal when something traumatic happens. I was in a lot of physical pain. I don't think I slept. I had nightmares like from day one. They had to put a sign up in the hospital not to touch me, because if someone touched me, I would freak out and try to hit someone.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
You did have
so
some mental and physical trauma
Oh yeah,
for a long
yeah.
time.
So, and then I had buyer's remorse. I was like, why did I choose this? Like, I don't want to be here, and I think also, just sharing with your listeners, I mean, this was back 26 years ago. People are more trauma informed, and it's less stigmatized. But like when I was, in 99, like no one knew really anything about trauma. There was nothing, PTSD was only something that like, male soldiers got. So that took a while. I literally thought I was losing my mind, because all of a sudden I would, and this is after, because I was in and out of the hospital. I had I think it was like 13 or 14 major surgeries over 3 years. I had to relearn how to walk 5 different times because my leg would kept on breaking. And then I had to have another surgery to lengthen my leg because so much bone loss happened my bone was outside my skin and it broke off. So there was just extensive physical, and also sharing with your audience, going through intense physical cancer treatment, physical recovery. That is a trauma, because my definition of trauma is there is no choice. There was no choice. Your choice was taken away. And also the experience was so overwhelming, you could not digest it. And so when trauma, when something happens physically, emotionally, or, an assault or an accident or a kidnap, any and all of those, there's cortisol that gets flooded in your system, and it affects and I really think that this is really helpful because I felt like I was losing my mind. I was like, why am I okay? And then all of a sudden I get flooded with this fear, and then I can't talk. And it's usually, and the reason is because uh the systems that are created from evolution for us to like survive the unsurvivable or something that is extremely scary, that gets set in and that gets set off, and our brain doesn't digest and it doesn't remember trauma the same as a normal experience. So like most people can't remember what they did a week ago, but you definitely remember that time. Mine was 26 years ago. I remember every little thing about it, the smell, and my brain, like my brain was always looking out for danger because I had experienced that. And so what really healing is releasing those unconscious adaptations. So that's, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and in being in survival mode. So really healing is really a long time of helping your body to realize that you're not in that survival, but then also releasing the imprints and also the fear and the emotions from the original trauma. So like, for example, like I survived what happened to me in Mexico. I survived. I was back in the States, but I kept on having nightmares about that. And like when you don't sleep, then you don't get to rest, and then you don't heal as well. Um, but like none of this was under my conscious control. So you just don't decide, oh, like, hey, it's, wait, no, 12 o'clock, it'd be great for a flashback or an emotional flashback or an anxiety attack. And so on the road to recovery, I physically recovered, but then it was like the emotional thing. And
Sorry, doctor, what was your breaking point when you were at the lowest, and what did you do to what was that change in what changed, or what did you do to start the healing process? Because as you said, we didn't really know 26 years ago. We didn't really know. I mean, going to psychologists is still hard today for some people, including me.
yeah.
So 26 years ago, you had this traumatic event. You were in a wheelchair. You suffered. You had all type of traumas. How long it took you? How many years it took you when you said, I need help, like mental health? And what did you do? Did
Oh,
you go to the
well,
psychologist?
Well,
Did-
luckily, I mean, my parents were pretty open, and I think they understood that I just survived something that most people don't. And so they got, I mean, I was
or you
sharing
had
that
therapy right away?
they put me on antidepressants in the hospital. They, I started to see a therapist right away, but honestly, I was so, disconnected. So like when you're in a lot of physical pain, I would disassociate. So I was such in shock that I can remember talking about my trauma, and I was like,
Yeah, so
yeah,
basically the first couple of years, the worst thing for you was the physical pain, because you were in such a pain that
yeah,
the mental part didn't, I guess the body shut down the brain, right? And you were just feeling the body.
yeah. So it was like 3 years of intense like PT, and I always tell so anyone, because I've had intense. I mean, my bones were so crushed, like my doctors were telling me that they've never seen a living person with such crushed bones before. Like it was that it was a whole huge extensive surgical endeavor to heal my bones. So that was 3 years. So that was like the rest of my high school year. I didn't I heart I like, so I was really removed from my social group, which, when you're 16, you're really venturing out. Well, like when I was 16, like my mom was helping me give me showers. I couldn't walk, I couldn't sit up by myself. So it was a really weird time because at the time I'm supposed to be going out and being more independent, I was like completely
Yes.
dependent on everyone.
Did you thought you were gonna stay in a wheelchair forever, or you knew you could recover?
They never said that. They said that I would, but I would like and I want to share this. This is, part of what I'm very strong about is like do not let doctors, of course, and I guess a doctor now. Like I don't really I feel like I'm more of a patient advocate because I was first a patient and that spurred me to become a provider and a doctor. But don't let your doctor's forecast like lock you in, because really like your potential to heal is infinite. And also, if you believe you're going to heal in some way, somehow, you will seek that out and your brain will try to find that. But if you just take, you know, a doctor's like, my orthopedic surgeon, he was kind of more pessimistic. He's like, Allison, like, just get used to having pain and like being uncomfortable. And I was like, no, I was like, I am not, because guys, like being in that level of physical pain, I was like, if I have to be in this level of pain, like I will eventually like not like I did not see how I could actually cope with that long term. Like I was like, I have to heal because literally if I have to like this level of physical pain will eventually wear me down. And like life is I felt like as a trauma survivor or as someone whose innocence was taken away by unconscious people at a young age, I feel like the highest justice for us and for everyone is to reclaim your ability to live and to thrive. But the roadmap to that, especially back 25 years ago, was very, you know, you know, I didn't know, there was no one that like could show me that road path. So I was just doing research. I would go to chiropractors, I would go to acupuncturists, I went to therapists. I had to be like inpatient for PTSD because I didn't understand what was happening. And so that really didn't work. And so I just started, it was this scary moment where I was like, no one really gives like, and sorry for my language, a shit about me more than myself. And so it almost was like, wow, there are no people that can, experts that have actually been through the nightmare that I've been through that actually have survived. And like when I would guys, because a lot of the experts, they don't, some doctors have lived experience, but like none of my psychologists or none of my healers had been to the extensive physical, mental, emotional, and also like sexual trauma that I experienced in that. And so like they kind of they didn't have much high hopes for me. I could feel that on a vibrational level. And I was like, wait. If anyone deserves an amazing life, it's me and it's other trauma survivors. But like these people don't know because they haven't been through it. So they don't understand the inner architecture of it. They can intellectually, from like a theory based, like infer. But like I literally was like, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They've never had their life almost taken. They have no idea what it's like to, like, and God bless them. Like I'm glad, I'm so happy that a lot of people don't know that. But I was like, how can I trust, a doctor or provider that has never even been like on even a small level where I've been? How can I really trust them to lead me forward? um and like on an emotional level, I would go to several therapists and I would share my story, and like I knew they were disturbed by the level of violence that was inflicted. And so then I was like, well, if they're disturbed by my story, how are they going to help me? So, because
Well, how did you end up? What? How did you end up getting help? What's the first thing that actually started helping you?
so I think the first thing that started helping me was just holistic medicine. And that's why I got my master's and my PhD in it. And so doing cranial sacral, work. I had a great pain management doctor who, like, basically were like, told my parents that they need to take me to, this cranial sacral therapist, which was a massage therapist, the chiropractor. And, my parents being of Western medicine, they're like, this is just stupid. This is wasting our money. And this pain management doctor was an MD, and she's like, no, your daughter has been through an extreme amount of stress and trauma. It's going to take a lot of input, i.e., money, time, resources, effort for her to get back to, I mean, she will never be who she was before, but like to get back to normal functioning. And so I think a lot of people who haven't been through trauma or depression or emotional abuse or any of that, I think a lot of people, including myself, most of our peers don't realize what we've been through. And we're like, thank you, you haven't been through. But there's that isolation. And then they don't understand, why can't you get up in the morning? Why can't you focus? Like, you're safe now. Why can't you let that go? And like, I mean, any of your audience wants, like, the deep dive in it, we can, they can sign up for like my trauma certification, because there is neurological, brain-based research and just basic anatomy and physiology of why, after something like that happens to you, why you can't, you're stuck, why your brain. And so it's really, so I guess I just decided, I was like, okay, so what type of story am I going to have? Am I going to fight this? Am I going to like take on ownership that probably, I mean, I know my parents care about me, but they don't know really what to do. So I kind of like, I guess, decided that it's my like life mission to really figure out how to really heal this, because it seems that, especially back in that day, that there was really no people um, that I had seen or talked to that, were actually happy after like a traumatic experience. And, I talked to some people that had been in horrible, horrific car accidents. Um, but you can tell on like a vibrational, subtle level that, and I was like, I really do believe, because of my spiritual experience, I was like, anything is possible. And so I really do think the gift of, going to that spiritual place and that vibrational place, I was like, I don't know how, but like, I believe. And so believing that you will heal, I think, is the first step. And, you know, where, like, I don't know about you, but like, I had a lot of doctors being very pessimistic about my healing. So that was the first thing, to be like, I refuse to accept someone's, I can accept their help, but I'm not going to accept that I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life because this thing happened to me. Um, and so I think I just, the hope is that, even slow progress is progress, and, one step at a time. And I think when you take it one step at a time and you invest in healing your trauma, either through therapy, but like talk therapy for me had a limit, because, trauma by definition is there is no logical reason why someone would do that to a human being. This trauma goes above and beyond um, what's logical. And so you can't heal it through the conscious mind. You have to heal it through the body. And also, I think I was like, there was someone, I guess, with PTSD, I think it was Jordan Peterson, that said, a lot of times people who have PTSD, like, because humans are resilient, we get through a lot of stuff. But when we face evil or people who want to harm us intentionally, there's, there's less of the population has directly faced those type of people who want to harm you and that objectify you in such a way that your life doesn't mean anything. And so, yeah, like I think is scary because your world, your bubble of safety just got popped and you can never go backwards. And but then in Adolfo, you probably felt this, like your peer group, it's like you're happy that no one had to get kidnapped or, traumatized that. But then there's also this loneliness and then this feeling of not being understood, heard, and you don't want people to see and understand, but then also then that further isolates, and also trauma isolates people. It disconnects them from themselves, from their heart, from their dreams, from other people. And so other people's ignorance or lack of
Yeah.
experience with traumatic experiences then further isolates us.
Yes, one of the main goals of this podcast is to start with very basic things like mental health is real. Depression is real. There's a lot of people who still believe that depression is a joke. There's a lot of people who still believe that going to a psychologist is for losers or it's a waste of money. A psychologist. There's a lot of people who still believe that going to a psychiatrist is for you're a crazy person, and this is the basics.
Well, and like luckily, I guess like the positive of like my family is like they were like, of
Understood. They're
course,
very educated.
they're educated and they're like, of course, like this is a major, like anyone, whether it was me or someone else who went through this, needs help. And it's not because I'm defective or that I'm off. It's just because of the situation. But, you know, I guess I did therapy and talk therapy, and then I did acupuncture and yoga, and it got and I but like I was still, I guess I I thought that if I could intellectually understand what happened to me, then I would feel safe. And for me as a survivor, and that's when I started to go into the more mind body and the subconscious, because our body remembers everything. And so really in order to heal trauma, you have to go beyond your conscious brain, because guess what? Your conscious brain is like, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm awesome. But trauma, like I always tell people, guys, like you don't, when you've had trauma, and I also want to expand this, Adolfo, because um like we both kind of had extreme, like very, I don't know about the statistics. I mean, I don't know how many people get attacked in and like survive death, or how many people get kidnapped and survive that. It's a very small percentage. But I also want to share that trauma is also being emotionally, yelled at or neglected emotionally, your parents shaming you for your emotions. And I feel like that is like an epidemic, because like our parents' emotional programming gets projected and pushed onto us. Their unhealed trauma gets put onto us. And even though my parents were educated and they know I love them and they know I talk about all of this, because we have to talk about this and de-shame, like our own, our parents' own, lack of understanding, because they do love us, but just because someone loves us doesn't know that they know how to address it. So
Of
my
course.
parents they did get frustrated because they aren't trauma experts. They're like why can't you just get over this? And I'm like, do you think like I'm the number one person who wants to stop this, you know I,
Yeah, I
like
don't
there's
know.
nothing. But so that's the thing is that your conscious brain is only 5% of your decisions. Your whole subconscious, unconscious, survival self, and what I mean is there's tracks in your nervous system. Like I want to, like an example is like you're like if your audience is like if you hit, like if you like step on something sharp on your foot, you don't have to think about it, you just pull away. Same if you touch a hot, it doesn't have to go to your conscious brain. So on an emotional level, we do this. And so most of people suffering depression, um, destructive patterns, destructive patterns or like coping mechanisms is really because like their body's reacting and trying to survive, and our brain isn't in control. And I think that's I think a pain point that a lot of people who haven't had depression or who haven't had PTSD, they're like, well, you're safe now, you're outside the war, you're not, you're safe. But like the thing is that going back to the physiology of memory and trauma, like because something is traumatic, it doesn't get filed in the same way, it's still in the present. So the recall of that trauma is unconscious, and then it gets projected. So for example, like if something happens, like like if I was first when I was crossing the street, that would create like this whole fear thing. And that was very hard because then I didn't feel safe, I wasn't present, and that also can sometimes be attributed to ADD. I was not ADD before I was like traumatized. So there is a high correlation with mental health issues and also being unsafe physically, emotionally, sexually, or also just being unsafe in the world. Because like Adolfo, like your brain, your conscious adult brain is like, the chances of me getting like abducted and like all of this is like slim to none. But like that fear of not being in control or something like that, then somehow those memories haven't been consolidated into the past. And so little things in your day-to-day life that isn't a big deal could trigger like your brain of being unsafe or it's not okay. And we were talking about before we came on air of like what I sometimes feel like is depression is like a survival response, because if you're depressed and in bed, then you're still safe, right? So like for me, a lot of times the depression would come to try to keep me safe, because like if I'm outside living the life or living my life, I could get hurt by someone. Even though that's illogical, our emotional brain and our unconscious and our subconscious runs our decisions. And I think a lot of people aren't educated on how our brain and our survival system works. And then they get angry. I don't know if you did, but I did. I was like, why can't I just snap out of it? And so there is, and if you guys want to learn more about that, then probably take a course, because we could talk about the psychobiology of trauma and of your brain, that is taking over if you have been emotionally. And guys, I really do feel like trauma, it's a very rare person who hasn't had any trauma. And so it just is a continuum and the amount of severity. And so, and a lot of times if trauma happens when you're very young, before you can create episodic memory, that means you have memory. A lot of us don't have memory until we're 4 or 5. But a lot of our programming and even our traumas, just because we don't remember it, doesn't mean it's not impactful. And in fact, sometimes our brain shuts down our memories, and we don't actually understand what happens, but we have these feelings of unsafety or overwhelmed that plague us or stall us in our adult life.
Doctor, let me ask you something. If let's say you get a 16-year-old who suffered exactly what you suffered, what would you do to her? What would be your recommended treatment?
Well, what I I actually like had a client who had been, assaulted, and her actually parents had contacted me. And so that's why I think it's really important for your listeners to get a professional opinion, either like by me or a psychologist, because treatment, there's different stages. But first, I'm very cognizant that if someone is in a trauma spiral, or if they feel unsafe or their brain has hijacked, because if you've been assaulted sexually, physically. A lot of times your brain doesn't feel safe, and talk therapy or even theta healing, even though theta healing I feel like is more powerful than talk therapy. Sometimes you need, my number one with anyone with PTSD or treatment resistant depression. I don't do it in my practice, but I refer out because you sometimes need that. I think like mine is psychedelic assisted therapy or ketamine infusions. Um, Ketamine infusions is and theta healing and the somatic work that the theta healing, the trauma informed theta healing, and the somatic work that I do with my clients combined. Because if there's certain points, if the brain is just in a constant trauma spiral and the person's like very foregone, they can't do basic tasks, they can't. People's trauma spirals look differently depending on the person, but mine was almost like I couldn't function. And I'm a very high functioning person and have always been. But sometimes when you've had trauma, like you can go backwards. And so you just have to have someone who has experience, who's trauma informed, that can be like, no, you're not ready for this mode of treatment. You need to like stabilize your brain. And I think, a lot of psychiatrists don't know about ketamine for PTSD or treatment resistant. No one can make money from ketamine. So that's probably why they're not educated. Because here in America, like our system is run
I've
from
actually seen some new commercials about ketamine treatment that I
good.
actually want to ask my psychiatrist about.
Mm.
Let's see, because I've seen some TV commercials about ketamine now.
Well, and I mean, and I have and if anybody wants to reach out, I have a couple like verified people that I know, because like in anything, it's good to get a referral, and like I have a referral network of people, because like not all healers are the same, not all doctors are the same, and so it's good to get referrals, and also to your audience to also interview their doctor. And really, because I think sometimes when you are not a doctor and because I remember being there, I was a patient, I was a child, and then a young adult, just you just think that this person knows everything, but also empowering your listeners to self-educate and to find the solutions themselves. I think all of my healing breakthroughs, and my mom like referred to me, I wanted to heal so bad. I would research, I would talk, I would look. I never outsourced my power to one person. And also thinking that medical doctors know everything is giving way your power. You have to really own your healing process and seek it out and try new things. But like I swear, like ketamine is, you can look on PubMed, you can look at research articles. Maybe I need to do like a class on that, on how to read. But like when you can empower yourself to make your own decisions and not outsource it to someone. And of course, guys, I'm an expert in trauma because I've lived it. I've watched people go through it. I've mapped it out. I've helped other people go to the other side. But ultimately, we have to really, like, you have to trust yourself, and that I think is hard, because when you've been traumatized, you don't trust yourself. You don't feel safe. You don't feel safe with others. And so that also is something, and that's why a lot of people who've had trauma isolate and they don't share, because people don't understand, because they're not trauma informed. And so I think, I don't know, I'm just on a mission to de-shame trauma, to de-shame the victim blaming. When I went through my whole scenario, do you know how many people were like, oh, she shouldn't have been walking by herself,
Yeah, of
she
course.
shouldn't have been in Mexico, she shouldn't have been. So that I had to endure a lot more suffering because of ignorant people, because a lot of people don't like that. They have a fragile ego and they don't want to think that anything could happen to anyone. This is called the just world hypothesis. And so they blame the victim. Oh, you shouldn't have been in Mexico. You should have waited for someone. And so they put the blame on the victim rather than,
Yeah.
no, the blame is on the people that did this to her, not the victim.
Yeah. Doctor, to wrap it up, could you share 5 things that you would recommend to any person suffering depression, anxiety, PTSD to get like an instant change of their lives? Someone who is suffering right now, 5 top things, quick things.
Okay. Number one, listen to stories of people who've overcome it. You can look at all of my stuff. I've never seen someone as destroyed mentally, emotionally, and physically, and I'm actually like living a good life. I rarely have symptoms of of trauma, of depression. So like if I can do it, you can do it. And if I've seen people, so like there is hope. And so there is a solution. So that's number one. Number two, let go of the timeline and just like, because I think some people get hooked up on, I should be farther than what I am. Like, and so just accept that you are going to heal and that maybe it's going to look differently than what you thought or what other people thought. Keep going. Number three, that you need other people to heal, and it's actually strong, and it is actually takes a tremendous amount of courage to ask for help, to go for it, and like to celebrate that. Number four, if you're having suicidal ideations, that is your brain trying to get an escape from your emotional or psychic pain, or for me, physical pain. It's okay. And actually, a lot of trauma survivors and emotional trauma survivors go through this, but get help and speak up, because you're not alone, and you don't have to, you know, go through this alone, or you don't have to like your only escape is not death, and it's not through hurting yourself. And then number five is that your true self is like the most beautiful thing ever. Like the reality of who you are in your heart, your soul is so amazing, and you came here to do amazing things. And that remember that you are more than your circumstances, your sorry, I said fuck, but your diagnoses, that your value is more than your bank account or your failures. And really like that once you start to like see the beauty of your own soul and your own evolution, and you put your value in that, and also get support, like everything shifts. And just sending anyone who's suffering so much love. And wherever you've been, I've been there many times, many years, where I was just hanging on, I feel like, by a thread. And guess what? It does get better. And also like reach out for help. You're not alone. And, I'm on Instagram, drAllison Snowden. My website is www.drsnowden.com. I have another one, the Awakening Institute. And, I love survivors. I'm always here. And like, if anyone needs anything and I'm a safe person, send me a message and I will do what I can to, send you any resources me and my team have. Also I always tell my clients and everyone, like, I'm everyone's biggest cheerleader. We all need to we heal in connection with others, and we heal in connection with ourselves. And we need to own our own healing journey, but also part of healing trauma and depression is connection to self and connection to others. And also, the sixth one is, also realizing that a lot of people don't get it. And also, but there are people that will get it and can help you. So if you're around people that have the luxury of not being traumatized or have the luxury of not having PTSD, I mean, man, I think just in the past 6 years, I mean, I lived 25 years of 20 years of my life where I was in a constant PTSD, managing my nightmares managing that, I just started to live my life. I feel like a normal person where I wasn't constantly battling the after effects of trauma, PTSD, physical pain, emotional pain, feeling scared of, this weird fear or this doom. And so knowing that like a slow recovery is still recovering, and sometimes when you get the right treatment or the right person, you will like quantum leap. So, be persistent, and if I can heal, anyone else can heal. So, and I'm here to like, so feel free to send me a message if you're there. I got a lot of support from people when I was healing. And of course, like even if someone isn't paying for anything, like I definitely always write back and always share hope.
Doctor, one book that you could recommend for someone to read? A simple book, not something very medical.
Clinical. If you've grown up with trauma, like kind of like with what you and I have gone with, and then also I think more common is developmental trauma. Whereas if you grew up in an abusive household with emotionally absent parents, you might have something called CPTSD, or if you have PTSD, one of my favorite books is CPTSD Surviving to Thriving. Peter Levine? Oh, it's Pete Walker. And I've read all the books on trauma and healing, and his was so practical and helpful, because when you are in a traumatized state, it doesn't matter. All of your intellectual knowledge goes out the window. And so his book, so if you're, and also a lot of people are unaware or in denial that their parents were emotionally neglectful or abusive. Because remember, what we think is abusive is, is defined by the culture. And so I find a lot of people, like, it's very obvious I was traumatized. It's very obvious you were traumatized, because that's not a normal life experience. But when you're little and you have parents who constantly criticize you, they shame you, they are not there for you, or if there's, the opposite of abuse, mental, emotional bullying, that's trauma. And so I think a lot of people don't realize what is trauma, and they're like, well, I haven't been, assaulted and run over and, by a motor vehicle. I wasn't traumatized like Allison. But actually, some of the deepest trauma is that emotional trauma that most of us are in denial of our caretakers. And also, and that can also come from the outside of bullying, so trauma is actually very common. And there's help.
Of course. Well, Doctor, thank you so much Dr. Allison, thank you so much for joining me today. I loved listening to you and sharing with you. I'm sure a lot of people will follow you, check you out. And thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us at this tonight at this podcast. Please share, subscribe, check Dr. Allison Snowden Instagram page, Facebook, website. And God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.